Hey guys, so in this video we're going to be looking at how to use flams in the context of your playing. So to start with, we're going to look at taking it from just on the snare and putting it around the toms and the snare as well. So to keep it simple, pick one way of doing this, have a go at that, swap over the hands like the high and the low hand. So for example, let's say we're going to pick the snare and the high tom. To start with, we could have the high tom as the low hand in the flam. So that's the right hand is low, and then my left hand on the snare is higher. And that's going to sound like this. Then we can keep my hands the same, but now swap over the high and the low hand. So now my left hand on the snare becomes low, and my right hand becomes high. Sounds a little different, check it out. And let's go through the same with the floor tom. First, the floor tom on my right hand is going to be the low hand. So swap them over. Now you can hear one way, if the tom is the louder one, then it rings out more. If the tom is the shorter one and the snare is the louder one, it has a bit more of like a sharp impact. So you get there. Personally, I think that one sounds more effective when using it like in a song or in a playing. Doesn't have to involve the snare. Try it with the two toms. Let's do the same. Pick one way, so our floor tom's going to be the low one and our high tom will be the high one. Swap them over. Just some different ways of getting different sounds out of just using the flam. So, what we can then go on to do is take the flam and use it in the context of something bigger. You know, if we're playing along to a song, we're not just going to go... Get a bit boring, eh? So, let's take a typical fill, for example. We're going to go flam, kick, flam, kick. So, to start with, we could keep that on the snare. So we could go... Cool. How about, let's try it with some of the tom ideas. See, that last one doesn't sound quite so sharp. That's because the snare becomes the low one, and my right hand was the high one on the floor tom. So that's just doesn't have the same crack to it as something to bear in mind. So let's take that fill, use it in the context of a groove. I'm going to play 1.5 bars groove, and then I'm going to play the half bar fill. So that would be 3 and 4 and flam kick, flam kick. So. Sounds cool, eh? So, doesn't always have to be exactly the same thing. Doesn't always have to be the floor tom and the snare going. Mix it up. You can go snare, both on the snare, and then move your right hand to the high tom for the second one. Or the same idea, but with the floor tom. Or the opposite way around. Just different, slightly different ways of getting slightly different sounds but using the same fill and the same flam. So let's try it again, but a bit quicker. Cool. Okay, another thing you can look at is instead of using just one hand on the snare as part of a backbeat being like the loud snare that you get in a groove, where it's going, not like that. The backbeat really is the. Sounds cool? We could also use a flam in that instead. So we could go. Sounds pretty cool. And last thing we're going to look at with this flam today is using it at the end of a fill. So let's say we're going to have some singles and it's going to end in a flam. Now that finishes off that fill really nicely. Let's try another one. So let's go. Another one. Now, watch what happens if I just move my right hand of the flam down to the floor tom. Swap it back again. Again. Very slight change. Suddenly carries a bit more weight underneath it when I'm using the floor tom as part of that flam at the end there as well. So, give it a go, have a play with it, try out the different voicings just with the flams. A great one to get you started is just the flam kick. You can also change the timing of the kick. So like you've probably seen me play in some of them earlier, going, that's not just, I'm pushing the last kick slightly earlier, so it's on the E. Just some different ideas. You can get very creative with all this. Have a go, play with the different voices, use it in a fill, use it as part of the backbeat in a groove. If you've got any questions, let me know. Cheers.